And you are on the platform as news breaks that, well, Johnny wins on points. Amber gets 2 mil. He gets 15, 10, 15. It was never about the money, folks. And often I would say you'd like to think that breakups aren't about the money and they're not about winning points or hurting anyone else.
I worry for her.
Yeah, well.
I mean, what's going to happen?
Yeah, well, I don't, to be honest. All right, let's talk about breaking up and the possibility of breaking up in a less damaging, public and destructive way than Amber Heard and Johnny Depp ever were capable of. I was really interested, and I came across it on the internet, not because I was trolling how to break up. I'm not in a relationship, thank goodness. There's a firm out there called Exes, which sort of piqued my interest. You'd like to think that that is the goal of all breakups, or that would be the outcome of all breakups, but is it? Well, Bridgette Jackson is the chief executive of Exes. And to find out what they do and what they're about, I thought it'd be good to have her on the program. Bridgette, welcome to the platform. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, Sean. It's really fantastic to be here. Hi.
So what are you? You're a legal firm? You're hired guns?
No.
Are you a Camille Vacquiz?
So what we are is we help people separate with dignity. So we're divorce coaches. So what we do is we hold people's hand and we take them through the process, helping them make the best decisions that they can make across the legal, the parenting and the financial and well-being, and avoid the mistakes and the pitfalls that so many people make as they go through the process, including myself. I went through a very high conflict divorce that cost me $500,000 and 4 children in the mix, and I thought there's got to be a better and a more positive way to do it. There really has to.
As someone who has been through a couple of breakups, I think my divorce proper, actually, we negotiated with never setting foot in a courtroom. I've got to say, and I feel compassion and empathy for my ex who went through it and saw it from her point of view. I've got to say, psychologically, I found divorce with a child involved. We got through it, but it would have to be one of the most traumatic and life-altering experiences I've ever had. That's just my honest assessment of it.
Absolutely, 100%. You know, it's at the top of the stress continuum. With COVID, numbers have increased by, 30 to 35% of people who are going through the process. But I'm really encouraged because people, for us, it's not about going to court. That is not an option. So I'm really encouraged by the number of amicable couples who are working through the process with us from start to finish. They have to get legal advice, obviously, in the first instance, and then get their settlement agreement signed off. But we're all trained mediators, so we can work through any issues that they've got in relation to
How
their
does this work, though, Bridgette? Do both partners have to agree to come to you? Because otherwise,
not necessarily.
How do you avoid getting weaponised by your client against the other client?
So how it happens is usually, either two come together because they decide to be amicable. Because as we say to our clients, you want to start off on the process how you want to end, and we help people manage their emotions because that's one of the biggest things. People, if someone's not the initiator of the process, they're certainly at a different stage in the grief cycle. They're angry. They're like, I liken it to a running race. So the person who's initiated it, they've run the race. They've crossed the finish line. The partner that wasn't the initiator, they're like a stunned minute.
What's
they feel
happened?
like they're blindsided.
Yeah. Okay, so they come to you. How do you achieve that without someone who is hurting one way or the other, either the person who's crossed the finish line or the other person who's staring down the home straight and say, geez, that looks like a long way? How do you stop them going off at each other, telling you're a complete waste of time and filing court papers? That must be a hell of a challenge.
Well, I tell you what we do, and we love what we do, is we actually undertake a lot of intensive coaching. How to communicate with your ex or your toxic ex. How do you co-parent effectively? Preparing for mediation if you need to mediate in the future externally to us. How do you, conflict resolution coaching. So a lot of it is around how you communicate with each other, and having the big picture. So thinking of yourself in 6 months, 2 years, 5 years. do you want to have regrets in terms of how you've gone through the process? And you talked about a real fundamental issue before, and that's the children, because they can be used as weapons and pawns in the process. And I tell you, if parents start disparaging each other to the children, that's the start of the end, So that is, we help them through all of those different aspects to be able to come out at the other end, be friends with each other, actually be able to have a relationship, and, acting in the best interests of the children.
And that is such a huge thing. And I think no one is more qualified to be a parent than the parents. Even if you are not together, you have this one bond or thing that holds you together. There is no one else in the world that is the parent of your child.
Absolutely.
And it is such a fundamental and important thing to remember going forward. And kids do not get to choose if their parents are together or not. So you've got to do the best for them.
You have to, because in our business, we see the trauma every single day, in terms of, particularly in relation to high conflict divorces, the toing and froing and the alienation.
Does your service offer some ancillary service and support for kids to make sure that they're interested?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We work with everyone involved in the divorce and separation process, whether it's parenting specialists, counsellors, wellness coaches, career coaches. We look at it from a whole. So we develop a roadmap or a strategy. What are the outcomes that you want as an individual, also as a couple and a family, and how are we going to get there, and what do you need to get there? And, when someone says to me, you're an absolute miracle worker, our relationship as parents is actually better now than when we were together. So there are benefits of divorce and separation, because it's just a fact that not everybody can stay in the relationships that they're in. We are not pro-divorce. For us, it's about leaving no stone unturned in terms of whether you want to stay in that relationship or not. We undertake coaching if people are on the fence. Should I go or should I stay in this relationship? What do we want to, continue to contain it, preserve in the relationship, and what needs to be negated, what needs to be removed. So all of those sort of things, at the end of the day, we want them to get the positive and sustainable outcomes without the time, the cost factor, and the massive emotional toll. And unless you've been through divorce and separation, or, having to comfort someone who's going through it, or your parents are, no one can understand until you go through it.
I'll tell you what, I think people are pretty crap about being honest about their experience in this too, because if you've been through it and been in the trauma, I got she tried to take me, and it's all, there's a whole lot of, amongst guys, a whole lot of macho bravado or actual deep psychological trauma, and people don't talk about it or share their feelings. And equally, I think women amp themselves up. Oh, sister, you go for it. He's awful. There's all sorts of rubbish talked amongst friends and family about separation. What did you say? The witches?
The witches coven, when they all get around together and because people haven't walked in your shoes in terms of your scenario. You should go and get this lawyer or that lawyer. But, at the end of the day, no disrespect to lawyers. I'm a trained lawyer myself. But, some lawyers can feel the conflict. And at the end of the day, the emotional toll that it takes on you and your family is just huge. And, there is a better way to do it. And people have just got to be able to sit back and learn with us how to manage their emotions, in terms of how do you communicate with each other, written even, how do we construct an email? What does that look like? Every single
I did
communication.
a stand-up comic thing only once. I did a stand-up comedy routine, and most comedy routines draw in real life. And I said, I told a joke, which was in no way true, I might add. And I said, my ex-wife, we had a great deal, a really equitable deal. She got the house and the money, and I got to pay for our kids' education. And then I said, but it's really good. We still talk, we communicate through lawyers' letters, but that's a conversation, isn't it? And I was actually being hyper-satirical and not at all true about just how bad things can get. How many of your clients or people who come to you does it not work for, and they end up going to court and lawyering up and going full metal jacket?
Well, very few, because do you know that we tell them constantly, if we're going to walk down that path of going to court, what's that going to look like you? How is that going to affect you? And, 95% of cases actually settle before they get to court, even on the steps of court. And there is a better way to do it. Mediation is really the way to go. Alternative dispute resolution opportunities, collaborative law, collaborative practice, negotiation. If you can't work it out see together round the kitchen table, get an intermediary like ourselves. Here at Equalexes, it's about focusing on, not from a positional aspect, but from common and shared goals.
Yeah, I must admit, I almost did that in my last relationship bust-up, and then I looked at the people that were going to mediate and researched them, and to be honest, they were all part of a cabal of women, and I searched their legal backgrounds and their connections with each other, and I said, there's no way I'm going to go to a mediation with you people sitting as the mediators. And they came back and were really nasty. They said, well, that proves my point. You have already, in the way that you've tried to set up this mediation, indicated that you have a predisposition towards the person who was on the other side of the argument. And I have to tell you, this is a real, and I have experienced, there is a feeling that the system of family court, separation and divorce is culturally and intrinsically bent towards the woman, towards the female.
Yes, well, do you know what, Sean? We've employed New Zealand's first male divorce coach. So he's had, a number of years working as a family law barrister, and said, people have got to avoid the court system. So he is now on board, and I'm going to be bringing more male coaches on board, because that is a huge area that really. The issue is, and particularly with the Heard and Depp case that's obviously just been announced today, the outcome of that is the fact that, men can be victims too. Women can be absolutely the instigators of mental and emotional and physical abuse. And I think this case really is a turning point for society's bias.
Yeah, it would almost seem to me there is a roadmap for women to do well out of separation if they are the first person to get to what you called the finishing line. Make an allegation of domestic abuse or abuse. Men feel incredibly angry, so therefore emotionally off kilter because of that. And then, of course, if they try to fight back, but you're just an aggressive male. And I know a lot of men who've been stuck in that situation, and they are being played. And I guess Amber Heard has done nothing for that perception.
No, and the thing about it is, women need to know that if they've, in terms of domestic violence, if they're going to be loud and proud about, well, not proud, but, talking about that publicly or even just to friends, etc., they have to be telling the truth, because the tide, I believe the tide is turning, and, it's now going to be #men too. Because, I see 65% of women in my business, 35% of men, and that's growing. And, they do operate differently to women. Women are very, very, emotional, and they like to talk about things, and they are very intense in relationships, and if they've got dissatisfaction, then they're going to take action in terms of that. Men are very closed books. Men don't like to talk about this at all. But
we're embarrassed of failure because we have these overinflated sort of, we're trying to express our ego, and we're meant to be the hunter-gatherer and meant to be, whereas women are just emotionally manipulative, aren't they? Well, much more better at being emotionally manipulative. Not saying that's a negative.
Because they are more emotional. Women are from Venus and men from Mars. Definitely that is, that is true, isn't it?
Yeah. All right.
We're different.
Let's talk, brass tacks here. What do you reckon the process that you go through looks like money-wise? What percentage? And sorry, I'm just sitting here thinking about the money I have spent on law.
Economic disparity. You're thinking?
Well, no. I'm thinking how much is either party in a separation going to change by going through the process you offer, rather than going through the court system?
How much money do they save? Lots. Absolutely. For a start,
you're not having to pay
with two lawyers.
You couldn't give me a general percentage?
A general percentage. So I would say at the very least, at least 50 to 60% in terms of, because when they're not, we don't charge like lawyers, we charge packages of a number of hours. Yeah. And depending on whether you're an amicable couple working together, that's called the Successful Settlements Program. Then we have a support package and a strategy package for individuals who are going through situations that are potentially high conflict. But I tell you what, in terms of amicable couples working with us, if we see one couple and they say, I want to bring my partner on board and work through this process together with your team, 9 times out of 10 they engage with us. And actually there's a real relief there. Because once you start writing those letters backwards and forwards, that really is the start of the end. I've got 11 archived files of my case, which, I may as well have pulled that $500,000 down the toilet.
And no one won out of that, did they? Because the money goes to third parties, not to
the lawyers and the forensic accountants, and that they were the ones that won out of it. But, talk about turning, lemons into lemonade was my passion for this area. And regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, is helping you through the process, because you can divorce well with the right people around you.
I want to tell you about a business I know about in Australia that looked at coming to New Zealand, but is more likely to go to the UK. I'm not going to name it, but basically it managed through the wonders of computer technology. It managed to gather all the data on every divorce separation case in every jurisdiction in Australia, and the data on every judge in every court in every jurisdiction in Australia. And if you go to these people, they feed all the things about your case and the person you're in dispute with into a computer, and they say, this is the most likely, to a certainty of 90% or something, this is what a judge will decide. Or a court will decide if you go through the court process. Here's our best guesstimate. Why don't you guys just settle for that and give us a way lower cut? That seems a pretty good way of doing business or breaking up as well, to be honest.
I love it. I'd love you to send me, I'd love you to send me their details. Yeah, absolutely. It is very difficult.
I, in fact, think they're getting approval from the Australian federal government that before you can get a family court hearing in some jurisdictions, you have to have gone through that process.
I love it, because, people say to me, and I'm sorry I haven't got a crystal ball, I say, how much is it going to cost me, and how long is it going to take me through the process? And I said, well, it is contingent on many things, including how you two are going to act through the process, coming back to managing your emotions. And that's what we do well, is we equipped people to be able to start on the right course and continue on that path. Because once you're on the high conflict path, let me tell you, it's very difficult to get off that escalator.
And it is terrible for your health. It is terrible for your happiness. It is terrible for your well-being.
Everything,
Bridgette,
your work gets affected, everything.
Yeah. Bridgette, what I like about what you're doing, it is clearly fed from your personal experience. So you kind of emotionally have skin in the game of your business, which is a fantastic thing. Have you ever thought about extending this? Because I've always found in my life, I look back at, and I've had good relationships until they weren't, but they all seem to follow the same pattern. And the trick is probably trying to get into a relationship that doesn't end with having to go and see someone like you or a lawyer.
Yep.
What about building a business that's that is the fence at the top of the cliff, or just, bulldozes the cliff so you don't have to fall off it?
Yeah, I'm actually a trained relationship coach as well, and I'm going to send you this, what I've got, Sean. So it's 50 plus questions to ask yourself before you get into a really committed relationship. What sort of money style have you got, for example? Are you a spender or are you a saver? What sort of, do you want children, for example? All of those, do you like going out? Or are you a recluse? All of those things. So before you get really committed with someone, is to ask those questions. And also, I know that we never think that we're going to divorce, but more than 50% of the population are.
Though I know it's going down in time of close, but our divorce rate is actually dropping.
You know why? Because I was talking about on News Hub the other day. Yeah. Less people are getting married, so de facto relationships, although the Property Relation Act applies after 3 years and courts being closed, except for urgent applications, and also people deciding, well, from a financial perspective, it's not potentially the right time for us to divorce. They'll hold on until they actually can't cope anymore. But also other cultures coming to New Zealand where getting divorced is frowned upon. All of those sort of things, society, changes, all those sort of things affect it. But definitely, we've seen a huge boom in terms of our industry, but definitely the divorce rates have gone down because less people are wanting to take the legal commitment of getting married.
Hey, this has been a great chat, but I do want to say one thing I'm sure you'd agree with before we leave. No matter how bad things are in the relationship, getting drunk, stoned, bad-mouthing each other and hitting each other is never the solution, right?
It's not okay. Yeah. 100%.
Hey, Bridgette,
if people are doing that, we can help them.
How do they contact you? I'll give you the free plug. Go ahead.
Equalexes.com, and you can email us. You can we're on all social medias. You can give me a call 021 895 032, and our team would be really happy to help you separate with dignity.
Well said, Bridgette. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's Bridgette Jackson from Exes.